Hi guys, this is Tim from Nektar. I'm the manager for all of the Nektar controllers and the integration. Currently, well, most lately I've been doing the integration for Bitwig Studio. We also are distributing Bitwig Studio in the UK and in the US, and as you would expect, they play together very nicely. I'm here today to basically introduce you to, well, just give a kind of introduction to Bitwig Studio itself, kind of an overview, and also to look at the Panorama's integration and how the two play together. So I'm going to start just by, well, I should clarify, last night I was messing around with a Bobby McFerrin track in my room, just seeing how the stretching algorithm was in Bitwig, and it was pretty cool, and I just kind of, in about half an hour, put together some loops, and I'm just going to kind of jam over it with the Panorama, and hopefully everything will sound half decent, but we'll find out. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so that was quite fun. I was doing a lot of stuff there. I was triggering scenes, recording on the fly into different clips, setting clips of a set length from the Panorama. I then started playing around with modulations, different velocities, using a step sequencer, modulating the filter on the synth sample that I had going on, and it's good fun. I'm going to basically go over a little bit more about how you do all of those little tricks throughout my demonstration of Bitwig. But I'm going to start now with just a completely blank slate. So I'm just going to go to a new file, and this is the first thing you see when you open Bitwig. Now Bitwig is for me, I think it's fantastic the workflow you get. It's incredibly quick to do things, and that is the overall overall biggest feature is just workflow and the speed of doing things. In fact, as I was producing there, it was almost performance. In fact, lines between production and performance are blurred with this piece of software, which means that your production's much more fun. You know, and that's the most important thing. We all make music to have fun at the end of the day. So, looking at Bitwig now, you have the arranger here, and the browser here, the inspector here, and then this is the detail. The launcher that I was doing a lot of stuff from is opened by pressing L on your keypad. What's nice about Bitwig is that the launcher can be set alongside the arranger. If I press Tab to go to the mix view, you can see a kind of live layout, which is great for performance. Although I don't tend to work that way, I always found that a bit disorientating having columns for clips. So it was always nice to be able to have them next to each other. So I'm going to actually hide the launcher on the mix view, so that I've got big VU meters instead. So there's effectively two sequences in Bitwig. You have the linear arranger here, and you have the launcher, which is more loop-based. But the fundamental building block of Bitwig is the clip. Clips will appear in the arranger and in the launcher. A clip is anything with musical content. And there are two types of clips. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce a note clip. Just drag one out of the clips browser and put it into the arranger. Just hide the looper for now. And let's just play that through, see how it sounds. It's a fairly basic clip. It's obviously, as you can see down here, it's from the drum machine, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail later. It's 2 bars long. What I actually want to do is perhaps make it 4 bars, because that's how I tend to work. So I either have a choice of duplicating it, which will give me two clips, and I'm just going to double click on the clip, and the detail editor changes to show me the detail of the track. So you can see I have the 2 clips here. Actually, what I want to do, rather than duplicate it, is just drag it out. And if you hover at the bottom right of the clip, you'll see this little loop emblem light up, and I'm just going to drag that out to be 4 bars long, and then I'm going to just loop it round so that we have now this simple clip playing over and over again. So down in the detail editor, we're seeing the track detail here, which means anything in the track will be seen. If I click on this little button here, which is the clip detail, I have just the clip itself, the clip that's actually selected. And what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to shorten the clip to be 1 bar, like so. So listen to how the drum beat's updated now. I've just got the first bar of the beat now, and up in the arranger you can see that it's switched to be 4 lots of 1 bar loops. I can also do that in the arranger. If I just drag this first loop marker here, you can see I get just 2 beats in my loop now. The clip's updated down at the bottom, and we have a beat that I'm a little bit happier with to work with. So in a couple of minutes we've completely changed. We've got a beat that we're working with, and we hadn't done any recording. We've just dragged in some of the sample content. I'm only going to be working with the sample content that comes with Bitwig for today, and we've got a different sound. So this is a note clip, and note clips have overlapping events, as you can see, which allows you to play chords and things. I'm now going to bring in an audio clip. So I'm going to start by looking for a drum loop to complement what I've just got. So let's have a little look. Now, before I go any further, I want to introduce these 2 buttons at the bottom of the browser. This is automatically audition, and this one is synchronize the sample to the project tempo. So if I'm playing, and I select a sample, it will start, but it won't start until it's in time with the sequencer. So I get a proper audition, if you like, of the loops that I've got available to me. Okay, this sounds a bit better than the previous two, so I'm just going to drag that one in. It's quite a good compliment. Just kind of beefs up the sound of the original clip a little bit. Now if I double click on this track, you can see the difference between audio clips and note clips. Audio clips have these little triangles at the top which are called onsets, and one of the most common things you'll be wanting to do in Bitwig is to split at the onsets, which slices up your drum beat into individual slices, almost like, well, individual events is what they're called. Now the important difference between audio and note events is that an audio event, they have to be, you can never have them overlapping. They always have to have a set place in time. So for example, if I was to just duplicate, this little event here, like so, just to make a little roll, it will override what was already there. But what was important to see there is how quickly I was able to edit this this waveform on the fly, and it was non-destructive, so I can undo it all as well. Just to look a little bit, just to look at another audio clip and do something a bit more interesting, I'm going to look for something that adds a bit of extra variance to the beat. Yeah, Gatem will do. Again, we can audition it at the right tempo. Let's go back to the loop. Okay, I'm going to bring this one in for now. Now notice as I drag it in, it just creates an audio track for me. It knows what kind of format the clip is, so it just creates the track for me, which is handy. Okay, so I'm going to have a little look at this clip. Another nice thing about Bitwig is that all of the editing tools are common across the whole of the interface. So it doesn't matter if you're editing detail down here or editing in your arranger, you always have these 5 tools available up here. Now these are also selectable by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very quick and easy to remember. But generally what you'll most commonly use is the object selection tool and the time selection tool. The time selection tool is most useful when you're working with your audio clips, because I can now start doing some, I can maybe add a trill at the start, which is going to be the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to select, I'm going to duplicate one of these, and what I'm going to do is just zoom in. And what happens is we have this little thing down here called an adaptive grid set, which means that as I zoom in, the adaptive grid is going to change to be, you can see it changing to 132 or 116. So I'm just going to go for some 132, like a really fast trill. So I'm just going to select just one little section here, then duplicate it a few times, which is going to give me a, okay. And then just to add a little bit of variation to it, I'm going to select the little trill that I just did, and I'm going to let's play around with the pitch. Okay, so I'm going to just draw in now a little with a pencil tool. I'm going to draw in a little variation in pitch. Okay, now again, I'm doing some fairly in-depth editing of this audio right now, but I'm doing it very quickly and easily on the fly, and just kind of talking to you as I do. One of the nice things that Bitwig does is when you draw something in with the pencil, it then simplifies it to give you just a few pointers, which is quite nice really, because often you end up with just like loads and loads of pointers in other software sometimes, and it's difficult to get into them. One of the other things about editing is if you hold down Shift, not Tab, Shift, you can move your points just by avoiding the grid and the snap to. Whereas if you hold down Alt for example, you end up with a curve going. You can just about see it there. Probably it's not the best best way to do that. I'll come to that again in a bit. But basically, we'll add a curve to the. Here we go. We'll basically curve your automation so you get a smoother ride. There we go, like that. You see, and so there's a lot of stuff you can do, and I've just been doing it in about 5 minutes. I've really sort of totally changed the sound of this waveform. Just to carry on, I'm just going to do one little thing at the end, just to add a little bit of interest. I'm just going to select. Just a couple of slices at the back here, and I'm going to reverse them. Just and again, simple sound reverse. It's a nice little effect, but it's one little button click in Bitwig, and this is kind of what I'm trying to put across to you. I mean, it's very quick and easy to do detailed editing. I was used when I was working in certain DAWs that I would record stuff in and then edit it afterwards, but actually with Bitwig I find myself more and more doing complicated edits on the fly just while I'm producing. It becomes part of the sound. You're kind of doing sound design and production all at the same time, and it's the first time that I've really felt comfortable doing that. Comfortable being the word, because I just kind of slipped into it. Okay, so what's next? What else can we do with audio clips? Right, I'm just going to, let's have a look. Let's go to let's try and add a one-shot sample. And what I'm going to do is, rather than, I'm just going to see if I can find something interesting. Okay, we'll go with this one. Now, rather than dragging it into a new track, what I'm going to do this time is drag it in between two existing tracks. And what that does is, rather than creating an audio track, as we saw with the original one, you can see that there's a little piano symbol that appears in the new track. And what that means is it's a note. It's a note track. You're going to record note clips. So if I double click on it, you can see that it's in the sampler here. So if I play with the panorama now, I've basically put my my audio one-shot sample all over the keyboard. And then this little button here in the sampler is going to spread it out over the keyboard, transposing it as necessary with the keys. So now I've got the opportunity to just hit record and add to my beat with some one-shots. Okay, now that's crying out for some delay, so this could be a good opportunity to introduce the device chain. And now in detail editor down here, you can see the device chain basically gives me like a chain of devices and you can add on the fly. And I'm going to add just a delay from the Bitwig stock devices, and you can see here. Just going to select 3 rather than 4. Add a little bit of high feedback. Okay, so it's starting to sound pretty good. So. And I just quickly added a plugin on the fly, and all of a sudden it changes the sound completely. Basically, whenever you click on a track, like so, double click on the track, you get the device chain down the bottom. Double click on a clip, you get the detailed editor. So I'm just going to double click on this one and introduce, say a little bit more about devices in Bitwig. This little button here will show your presets and your patches. And I'm actually going to change the patch now for this to make it just a bit heavier. And I'm going to select the house kit. Okay, so the first thing that's obvious there is I've now got a bongo instead of a hi-hat, so I'm just going to go in and edit that by double-clicking here. And now, for drum machines like this, obviously it's not so useful to have the keys. This little button down here will give you the drum, any of the samples that are populated. So if I move up here, you can see that I can select all of my I can now see in the clip all of my samples. And what I'm going to do is just select just where the bongos are. Actually, I'm going to start by moving what should be the snares down and zoom in a little bit so I can see a bit better what's going on. And I'm just going to drag those down to the snare. Click on it to select all the line. I'm going to bring those down. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to half time the hi-hats just to make it a little bit more dancey. Although it's got this kind of robotic sound to it now because all of the hi-hats are playing at the same velocity. So with them all selected, what I can do is change the velocities, just add a bit of variation. This is called a histogram, something that I think is very cool in Bitwig, because it's very quick and easy now to add a little bit of variation to my hi-hat sounds. Change the mean down a little bit. Change the spread. Let me show you what's actually going on there. If I click down here, you can see the velocities are basically redrawn, and the histogram effectively just changes them from where they are. You can see just moving all the hi-hat velocities around, just to give it a bit of a more humanized feel, if you like. Okay, so that's kind of like the well, in very short time, we've looked at some quite detailed editing of note clips and audio clips. Like I said, editing is generally all the same for both, and it's the same controls, the same tools, which is nice. What I'll do now is I'll talk a little bit more about the launcher and how that can work alongside what you've got. So the launcher, I like to work, like I say, in a linear way. So this little button down here will open up your launcher, and you can effectively play just set lengths of clips that will loop around. But it doesn't have to loop that way. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to drag this clip into here, and what I'll do is I'll actually change some of the way it works. If you turn the loop off, one of the nice features you have in Bitwig is the ability to select the next action. So you could, for example, just return back to the arrangement after you play a loop, which means basically when you trigger that sample, whether you do it from the panorama or even if you're using the mouse, when you trigger that sample, once it's finished playing, it will go back to the current loop. So I'm just going to try and do that now. Turn to and then launch one bar, and if I press this now, it overrides what's in the arranger, but actually it will go back again after it's played through, as you can see. So that works really well if you just got a quick fill that you want to just throw in over the top of your beat that you've got going on. So for example, if I just let's just add a few random notes here just to change the sample a bit. So you can see you can add like a fill whenever you want to on your drum beat. So that's one nice way that the launcher and the arranger work together. What happens? The launcher always overrides the arranger. This little button up here will always give playback to the arranger, and then you can also give playback to the arranger on individual tracks. So hopefully that explains the difference, and I was actually using in that Bobby McFerrin track. I was using this on a few occasions. Okay, let's look at actually doing some recording now. So I would like to introduce the Nektar Panorama at this point. The Nektar Panorama's integration goes incredibly deep with Bitwig. When you're recording and making music, you generally won't even have to look at the screen anymore. You saw everything I did with that kind of sample I did at the start with the Bobby McFerrin track that I was messing around with. I did everything from the controller. I'll just quickly talk over the main functions. Basically, you have mixer mode, which gives you full control of Bitwig's mixer. I can view the mixer by pressing view, and I can obviously shift over to mix view, where you can get a better view of what's going on. So you have a standard bank of tracks here. You have the selects, solo down here, and then you have pans and sends up here. And as with everything we do at Nektar, basically everything that looks a little bit convoluted, like if you wanted to get to send 8 from pan, you can always hold something down and get there with the data encoder, so it's just a bit quicker to find where you want to get to. As you'd expect as a keyboard player, you generally want to work on the track that you're actually controlling with the keybed. So I should first of all add some instruments, which might help. So I'm just going to go back and add a few instruments. Let's go for a bass line of some description. And let's see what we've got here. Let's add an is there an MS20 bass? Bring that one in, like so. So whichever track I'm playing, I have straight away control of the sends, and what's nice is it will always update to give you the different send levels of your tracks. So it takes away the thought process of which track is it I'm actually working on, which one do I need to change in the mixer, because you don't care about that. You just press the sends button and you change your sends. The macros are for the active track. I'll just show you exactly what that is. That is what you may happen to have on here. So at the moment we haven't got much, so I'm just going to drag something on there, and you can see that the pitch one appears there. Macros are stored with each patch in Bitwig, so if I change the patch, then obviously they're going to update, and there's not many at the moment that have got any populated, but that doesn't really matter. I'm just showing you very quickly how it works. You can store up to 8 macros per patch, and you can have multiple parameters controlled by those macros. So as I said, everything's based on the track you're playing. If we look at the clips button, that actually is the same principle. I have up to 60 clips per track. And as a keyboard player, because you generally will be creating clips on the fly on the track you're working with, that's why all the pads are assigned to that track. So it's not a grid. It's basically all the clips are on the active tracks, which means I can hit a pad and start recording. But the other thing that's really good with the Panorama and Bitwig is, rather than, as you see there, I pressed the stop too late, and I've ended up with like an extra bar on the end that I didn't like, and that's a common problem, of course. I mean, you're never going to get your recording right every time, and it breaks workflow because then you have to go in and you have to edit your looping. But what you can do on the Panorama, if you hold down the shift button on Panorama with the clips in view and use the data encoder, you can select the length of a new clip you want to record, and then you can pre-assign it. So rather than hitting a pad on the fly, you hold shift and hit the pad, and it will add a new clip length of whichever note length I've selected, whichever bar length I've selected. So I now know that I've got a 2 bar loop there. And what you can do then is shift and record will engage the looper. Engage the launcher's overdub mode. So it just it takes the pressure of recording off, which is nice. And I actually was using that in the first demo I did. The first thing I did when the intro was playing was set up some loops of a set size that would and then I used launcher overdub, shift record on the Panorama, to leave it on and basically just jam this kind of bass riff over the top of each scene that I was triggering. And the scenes are on this button here. This is, of course, the only one of these 5 buttons that isn't related to the track you're playing with the keyboard, because this is a global play all the scenes together. So, God, that bass riff was good, wasn't it? So you can trigger scenes and clips on the fly with your Panorama. And what's really good about the feedback from Bitwig's API is that you can see actual scene names and clip names as well. So if I name this clip that I did as just awful, because that's what it was, then you can see that the name appears on Panorama's display as well. Other stuff I was doing, other ways to trigger clips, is with the shift button held down, and then the buttons down here will trigger your clips of whichever scene you've selected as your target scene. Now I'd selected at the moment target scene 1 was going on, and I was doing a lot of the kind of clip triggering, bringing the drums in and out, bringing the bass and the vocals in and out on that kind of demo that I did at the start. And essentially, the way that you select the target scene is shift and then these buttons forward rewind, and you can see in Bitwig's GUI exactly which scene is selected. So now I've gone to 2. I can obviously trigger this other bass riff that I did that was just as awful as the first. Basically, there's a lot of functionality coming from Panorama, and there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of ways that you can introduce this into your workflow, and you have, like I say, full control of the software. That's mixer mode. Instrument mode is where you can control any device in the chain. So if I was to add to this, this bass some distortion potentially, or right, let's just do some delay for now. I can then flick along between the different devices in the chain by selecting by using a data encoder when I'm in instrument mode. So now I have control, you can see, of my delay parameters. I flick back here. I have control of my sampler as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn that delay off, because it's probably not going to work for what the demo is I'm going to do next. And the demo I'm going to do next is show you the step sequencer. And the step sequencer is part of Bitwig's API. It's only available with certain controllers. The Novation Launchpad supports the step sequencer, as does Livid's bass. And the Panorama. Those are the only three that I know of. But basically, in order to engage a step sequencer in Bitwig, you need to have an active clip, and it needs to be selected in the launcher. And you can do all of that from the Panorama, which is also something I did in the previous demo. So I'll just show you how to do that. Open up the clips for the track you've got. Set yourself up a new clip of a set length. I'm going to do 1 bar just because we're step sequencing now. And then start it playing, like so. Let's just solo the bass so you can hear what's going on, and I'll turn on a click track. You press the view button to ensure that the launcher is active in Bitwig, and then transport and step sequencer gives you the ability to set different velocities. You can see the lights are going on steps 1 to 8 here. I've got up to 32 steps I can control. I can change the step size as well, but I'm just going to leave it on 1/16 for now. And you can see if I just toggle this down, it gives me a modifier for the next bank of steps, which is just a quick way of kind of modifying it, so you don't have to keep switching in the display. I can select the note I want to edit from the keyboard, and then I can just start adding those notes as need be. Now the faders control different velocities, which is great because one of the common workflows, one of the common baselines is to basically set up like velocity modulation for like a filter on a bass track or something like that. So because we've got all these different velocities and different notes, I can actually change the note as well and add some different. So I can add other notes using my note selectors up here. And then once I've set up some kind of bass riff that doesn't sound amazing at the moment because it's not velocity sensitive, the patch I'm using, I can compress the instrument and then go to my sampler that's playing. Turn the click track off, it's getting annoying. And then basically select modulation sources from the Panorama. Now modulation source in Bitwig, I'm just going to enable it, and you can see exactly what happens in Bitwig. So a modulation source in Bitwig is this stuff down here. And when you select one, all of your parameters will turn a different color to show you that when you move the parameter, rather than editing the amount of that parameter is going to affect your sound, you're editing how much the modulation source is going to affect that parameter. So, for example, if I wanted to change the phase of the PLFO down here, basically you can see that it's a green little emblem. It gives me an exact, well, a very clear indication of the modulation that the velocity is going to do on that parameter. And on Panorama, I'm going to just go to the pages and I'm going to select, I'm going to do what I said to do and change the filter. So you can see now it's giving me a value of how much the velocity. I've just turned it down a little bit, so it's going to reduce. The higher the velocity, the lower the frequency is going to be. I can increase the resonance. And then when you're done with your modulation mapping, turn it off, and you go back to controlling the actual parameter. Okay, so it seemed we've been very quick. I'm trying to rush through stuff because we haven't got too much time to talk about an entire DAW and the controller for it. But what we actually did there was quite complicated. Setting up, if you try and recreate that with a keyboard, just playing it in, it's not going to be easy. The other thing is that we were able to sketch out a velocity map with our faders, which was nice. Having the step sequence on a Panorama just like a whole new dimension adds a new dimension to to the creativity. You can create sounds that you really would maybe not consider, you know. And the other thing to think about is the fact that the way that, you know, setting the velocities with faders rather than using the mouse, which can take ages, is just quite nice. Now, at this point, because I was quite happy, reasonably happy with that clip, I can just chuck it into my browser, and it doesn't matter whether I'm actually in the clip view in the browser or not. It just basically adds it to the library, and I can select that it's a loop, I can tag it, and I can select that it's a little bit quirky, so I can add my metadata if you like, then click OK, and it's just added to my library, which is really cool because often I find myself, rather than sitting making a particular song, I'm just messing around and finding all these random loops. And some of them sound pretty good, and I just think to myself, then, well, I'll keep that for later. But then, in a lot of DAWs, you know, you have to obviously save it out and save it as a separate, save it as a stem potentially. But basically, with Bitwig, it's just nice to be able to just chuck something over into the library. You don't even have to worry into the browser. You don't even have to worry about the page that's on there, so that you've got it. Chuck it over. I'll save that for later. Bring it into another track at some point. So yeah, that's pretty cool too. This is, again, if we go to the clips library, you can see the Tolka one that I did is down here now. This is the one that I actually did. So that's all saved there to be used whenever I want to use it. So just finishing off where we were with the panorama, you noticed that as I went to select the filter, I had every single parameter available in this menu, and that just kind of boosts your creativity. You start to tweak parameters you maybe didn't consider, and you tend to just end up with different sounds. You know, having this controller, having a controller with Bitwig will just multiply your creativity. And finally, I'll just introduce transport mode. And transport mode is where you have full control of your loop. You can actually move the loop around in the arranger. And you have control of your groove settings, which I actually used a lot to play and make the kind of hip-hoppy sound of the drums that I did to supplement Bobby's lyrics in the first demo I did. And you can set your punch in and punch out on too, and then turn your automation right in and off. And there's also transport mode where you get to the step sequencer. Okay, so that's a very quick look at Panorama and an introduction to Bitwig. I'm just going to show you a few creative little tricks you can do with the launcher in Bitwig. I'm going to start by introducing let's do a more melodic sound. So let's do some Rhodes or something, and we'll find a Rhodes sample. Just drag it in like so. What I'm going to do, I'm going to first of all mute that bass track because it will be confusing, and I'm going to add a new clip. I'm going to do it in Bitwig this time, so you can see how to do it in Bitwig. Basically, just double click on an empty clip, and it will populate it. I'm going to turn the loop off, and I'm going to set I'm going to change it to be a set length of maybe 2 bars, so that this is effectively just a 2-bar loop that's empty right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the next action I want to play the next clip rather than repeat. So effectively I'm going to then duplicate that several times. I'll just do 4 for now. And in Panorama you can see I've got my 4 clips populated. And I can just now, with Launch Overdub on, I can just jam over the loop. And as I jam, I'm going to be recording into individual clip settings. So let's just give that a go. Okay, and if we play that back, you can see I can go to different parts of the recording I just did. So I've kind of, although I've recorded, I've got different ways of selecting. I've just done a single recording all the way through, but I've already kind of automatically sliced it up, which is quite a nice little feature. It's something I quite enjoy because it's quite common that I'll just be sitting jamming over a loop rather than doing any kind of production. But you're doing this in this way, set up a template track with all of your clips kind of laid out like that, and you end up with, whilst you're jamming over your loop, you end up actually accidentally, potentially producing something half decent. So, so if you're a better piano player than me, you do anyway. And so that's just like I say, just a very quick kind of overview of like how you can use clips, and how this next action for me is an incredibly powerful feature and something I haven't seen before on any other software. So we looked just very briefly at modulation sources, and that kind of ties in with what I'll do next, which is talk about the unified modulation system of Bitwig. Now, Bitwig, basically you can modulate anything. You can even modulate modulators. You can, if you have a VST instrument that doesn't have certain modulators, you can add it to the effects chain, this stuff here of a device, and you can modulate it that way. So the first thing I'm going to do is, maybe let's just create a horrible sounding, purposefully horrible sounding string track that's very basic. Let's see, we've got on the polysynth. Let's do the string ensembler. Let's drag it in. Okay, so just going to hit record. I'm just going to record some straight boring chords. Okay, so it doesn't sound like anything in particular, but what I'm going to do here is add a modulator. I'm going to use the audio mod, and I'm going to select as the source my house kit that's playing. I'm just going to reduce the cutoff a little bit, which means that just the bass drum is going to trigger this source, if you like. Then I'm going to drag the polysynth into the effects chain so that I can apply this modulation source here to any parameter on my polysynth. The first thing I'm going to do is just change these parameters a little bit. So effectively side chaining the sound of the these horrible strings right now. So the bass drum is basically causing the strings to cut out, which gives you that kind of thumping sound. This is it without the envelope. Okay, so yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. And if you have a compressor, for example, if you wanted to do side chaining, and you had a compressor that didn't have that function of VST compressor you could obviously put the VST compressor into the effects chain, and then use this modulation source, the audio mod, to add side chaining that way. And look how easy it was. It was just literally one device, and then select your track to be the source of the side chain. So unified modulation is incredibly powerful. And one of the real advantages of Bitwig, you can come up with some crazy sounds that you just from playing around that you just maybe would never have dreamed of. So on that note, I'll talk a little bit about Bitwig's instruments. The instruments themselves are fairly simple. You can see in the polysynth, it's just a simple. You've got two main oscillators with the ability to add extra voices, and then a mix between them, filter, amplitude, and then you have your modulators. It's a very simple device, but what's nice is, of course, the idea would be then that you add other devices and modulators to make more interesting sounds. So all the devices in Bitwig are very, very simple, and if you're just getting into production, and it can be a little overwhelming at times, it's a nice way to start. The devices are simple, easy to learn, and then as you learn more and more, then you can start modulating stuff and coming out with different interesting sounds. And I kind of like the way it works. I'll also introduce containers in a little bit more detail. Now, containers are effectively, let's just go to this so we can see exactly what all of them are. Audio effects. Containers are, they don't do anything when you put notes into them by default, but they can contain audio effects or instruments. and layer them in parallel or in series. So, for example, we already saw one container, that was the drum machine. This is effectively lots and lots of samples in one, and each sample has its own device chain. You can see here, if I go to the kick, perhaps I wanted to add some delay to the kick, I can click on this little emblem down here, and that gives me the device chain for my kick, which starts off as just a kick sample. But maybe I want to just add a bit of delay to the kick, but don't affect anything else in there. So. Okay, so I've just got a bit of echo on the kit, so let's bypass that now. It just shows you effectively you can add as many devices into that chain as you like, and you know, that's why it's a container. It's because it's not just one instrument; it's a full lot of instruments. If I now look at some other ones, you could potentially have a instrument layer. So let me just drag an instrument layer. I'll just drag a patch with an instrument layer on there, which is a snare. And then you can see now, as I play in there, I've got to obviously turn the mute off, it'll help. I've got my it's basically 3 samplers in one. So I've got, the way that you would use this is to make it more kind of different velocities, according to what the velocity of the note coming in. You may want to play a different sampler, or more of, or less of another one. So you can kind of add multi-layered sampling using the instrument layer. One of my favourites is the XY instrument, which again, drag something in so you can see what it is and hear what it is. The XY is like effectively like an XY pad. And when I play here, I'm triggering 4 instruments at the same time, but I can phase in between the different volumes, the relative volumes of each instrument. And of course, you can control that from the panorama as well, like so. So you can move your X and Y down from the panorama. So yeah, just a nice kind of interesting way of working. The containers are really powerful tool in Bitwig for me. You also have effects layer, so you can save your favorite effects chains. You can save effects layer, so you can actually do parallel effects. Parallel compression is an obvious use for that. Maybe EQ with crossovers to certain. We can filter with certain EQ crossovers as well. Lots of stuff is possible with an FX layer, and all the containers that are in Bitwig. Other little devices you have. If we go to the, let's just see if I can. So we've got a simple, back to my simple bass track, and what I'm going to do is add one of these, what are called note effects. I'm going to pull the arpeggiator in. I'm just going to add it this way; it'll be quicker. So now I've got an arpeggiation going on for my bass. And of course, with the panorama, you can flick back and start changing different presets of your arpeggiation on the fly. Yeah, node effects are pretty cool too. And of course, I should maybe show you. Let's see if I've got some VST effects I can work with. It's worth looking at how VST works with Bitwig. I'm just going to drag Bitwig and drag the oddity in, and you will see exactly how it works. It opens up. What I'm going to do first is open up the macros, and you can obviously drag to any macros for each patch you want. You can assign a you have to select the source editor, and you can then obviously add different parameters and have control of them straight away from the panorama. Okay, so the way that obviously we saw with the polysynth, there was lots of or with any Bitwig device, they're already set out nicely with useful pages and useful kind of lists. So with a VST plugin, by default you don't have that information, but it's very quick and easy to set that up. And the information for the Panorama controller and any other controller you're working with, it's not just Panorama that's supported by Bitwig, it's just that it goes a lot further than the other controllers that are. You can, if I click on this, it gives you first of all my common page, which is essentially what is seen on the first page of Panorama, like so. So if I drag these on, you can see them appearing on the Panorama, and I have straight away controller for them. You can search by name to find the panorama. There we go, VCF, because it's the oddity. And of course, so you can actually look for specific parameters if you like. And you can build up your pages, and then once you're done, you just click on this and it will save as your default, so that you never have to do it again. Once you've done it once, you never have to do it again. Obviously, all of these different pages that were available, that's also assignable here. You can add a new page, like so. Then the fixed parameters, the envelopes are what's going to be on the faders, and the modulation sources just explains basically any modulation sources that happen to be available. Modulation sources tend to be just on the Bitwig devices for now. So yeah, I could obviously search for my attack. I could search for my attack and obviously put that onto my my fader and have. So, and then, you know, like I say, once it's done, click save, saves it to defaults, and then next time you open up the oddity again, you have all of the mappings that you've set out on Panorama. Okay, I think I've pretty much covered. I'm running out of time anyway. I've covered a lot. I've been trying to do a lot in a short space of time, but I'm sure there's lots of questions.
To be honest, Volker's been doing a great job in the chat room for
us,
and he's been fielding them all the time you've been talking. I don't think I've seen him stop yet. So
no, I've got to say,
that sounds like Volker.
Absolute stern performance from him. It's been fantastic.
Great. We should have, I should have mentioned at the start. Actually, Volker is one of the Bitwig developers who's in the chat room with you guys right now, and by the sound of things, has been answering a lot of questions, which has enabled us to get all of these presentations into 1 hour, which is great.
No, that's cool. Is there anything else that you'd particularly like to actually cover, thinking that we don't have to answer all of the questions?
Maybe one thing I forgot. Yeah, let me do that. What I'll do is I'll just go to go back to my house kit here. Just play the loop back. Get rid of all the other stuff I've done in these random demos. And I want to quickly show you two things. Firstly, I'm going to just beef up this drum sound a little bit by adding a little bit of reverb to the bass drum and the snare, but nothing else. And I'll do that through Ascend. Okay, so I'm going to first of all go down to my sends, and I'm going to add a reverb. And what's nice about Bitwig is there's several ways to do something. Turn the record off. That's probably a good idea. And there's always several ways to do something. So even though you're in the device chain, I've still got very clear views of what my send levels are, and I can set them on the fly. So you don't have to assign everything to the send. It's already there for you, and this is your send levels down here. And for the house kick, I can click on this little arrow, and it unfolds the track for all of those samples that are available on my kick. So rather than having to do lots of routing in the door, I can just add a little bit of reverb to my kick and my snare. You know, just the send levels there. Okay, so let's have a look at how that looks in the mixer view. This is your drum container. You click on this little arrow, and there's your different drum volumes. Again, we added originally in the device chain. We added the delay for the kick before, but you can also add it. You can also add it in the actual thing down here as well. You can see that you've got your devices in there, so I can add a delay that way as well. So, like I said, always several ways to do something, which means when you're working on focused on something in particular, you don't have to keep going to and from windows. You're always working. This whole demo, I pretty much have been in the same workspace. I mean, I haven't had to open any floating windows. I haven't had to go into a different window in order to do something I was showing you, because there was always a way to do that. So that's quite a nice thing about Bitwig. I should also maybe show one more unique feature that I forgot to do, which is if we go back to the horrible strings. Where are they? They're on the audio mod. Okay, I'm going to double click on there, and I'm going to introduce, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to give you this little button up here, which is your micro pitch editor. Now the micro pitch editor means that I can. Oh, there we go. Let's just stop that running and double click on it there we go. These little lines here will now change individual note pitch. So I can just select a couple of lines and I can just drag this down. So just that note is effectively bending in pitch, which is kind of like a nice, which is quite a nice way of working, if you see what I mean. It's something that's unique to, at the moment, Bitwig devices, but it's something I know that they're working on with VST manufacturers in order to encourage them to support this this micro pitch editing. And it can give you a unique sound. It's another unique sound that you can get, just another way of being creative with Bitwig. Okay?
Yeah, we're going to go to some titles. Stick with us because we're going to come back with some really interesting offers. So, run VT.
Great.
So, thanks to Tim for that. That was brilliant. And I think we're going to have to bring him back and do a lot more in depth.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Will you turn your mic on?
Oh, my battery's gone, Tom.
All right.
Just lean in.
No, hang on. We may get a little bit of life here. Sorry about that. I was just saying, I think we're going to have to bring Tim back because there's so much more to explore in this. He's clearly got a whole bunch of features. I think he's done a superb job for the last hour trying to get through it. Special thanks to Volker as well in the chat room because he's been fending questions all the way through that. So finally, we get to the bit that Tom talked about. And as you probably know if you watch our webcast every week, we have a special word which has been mentioned by Tim during his presentation. This week the word is panorama. That's panorama.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that a few times.
If anybody could care to email us, did you say there's a new email address, Tom?
Yes, it's webinar@scan.co.uk.
Ooh.
Which you should now see at the bottom of the screen.
So if you email us the special word that we mentioned, we will, by return of email, send you some special offers relating to Bitwig and indeed Nektar. So with that, once again, Tim, great job. Thanks for that. Next week, I think we have Ableton, which is...
Yes, the Ableton masterclass with our own.
What are they going to come back with after this? So, thanks to everybody for joining in. Thanks to everybody in the chat rooms. Again, special thanks to Tim. Special thanks to Volker. We'll see you next week. Thanks once again for watching. Bye-bye.
And don't forget the velocity competition.
Oh, don't forget the velocity competition. Yeah, whatever you do, check out a chance to win prizes that you just couldn't get anywhere else. Days with people like TMS, with a whole bunch of superb prizes that money can't buy. So check out the Velocity 2014 competition. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.